Help support the companies that support our community. Alright, I am starting out with a piece of SpectraPly. It's 3x3 and about 4.5 inches long, so just get it in between centers. I went ahead and marked center with a pencil, and then we'll get it trued up, and I have the lathe speed at 2500, and I'm going to use a spindle gouge for that. So I'm going to make a little lidded box, so I'm going to put a tenon down on each end, and I'm going to use the Easy Wood rougher to get those tenons on it, and then we will take a parting tool and part the lid off from the base. And I went a little bit too far. Be careful when you're doing that so you don't get the tool caught. Normally I try and stop a little bit shy of that and hand cut it off. But we'll get the chuck in. We're going to make the base of the box first. So get that mounted in the chuck and start working on that. So the first thing we need to do for this is on the base we're going to make a recess. So I'm using the calipers again on this. Just remember you just touch that one side closest to you, not both of them, to give it a little bit of a groove here. And we'll go ahead and get that recess set, and then we can start shaping the outside of the box. So you'll see here in a minute when I start working on the lid, but these are the new threaded rings we have at Niles Bottle Stoppers. So there's low profile and really about a little less than half the weight of the original. So it's the same process as on the base of it here, is just making a recess, but on the top of it we're going to make a tenon, and they go right inside of each other, and that way you're not having to use a lot of wood for the lid to accommodate for the recess. So I'm just getting this cleaned up and going slow so I don't make it too big. And again, still running the lathe speed at 2500 RPMs, and this is a parting tool. So that is really close, so I'm going to start shaping the outside of it now. And then we'll get this thing hollowed out too. I'm just going to clean up that little nub in the center before I start shaping the rest of the outside of it. And I'll come back to this and get the rest of it cleaned out. Just kind of wanted to get that nub out of there. I'm not really sure why. I just just did. Getting the groove of turning and want to get stuff cleaned up. So I'm going to shape the outside of it. I'm going to make a little pot shape here. And again, lathe speed still at 2500. And this is the #1 hollower. So I haven't turned much SpectraPly in quite a while. It's been a few years. So this one has some beautiful color. You'll see once I get the oil on it, it really popped. I really like the way it came out. So I am going to have to epoxy the rings in. So generally I would, after I got it shaped at this point, or after I got it hollowed out, I would go ahead and sand it with the oil, but I don't do that because I don't want to get oil down in that recess. So after I get it cleaned out here, I'm going to go ahead and run through the grits dry, and then come back And after I flip it around, I'm going to use the jaws to expand it to hold on to finish off the bottom. That's when I'll run through the grits. That way I don't get any oil down in that recess. So I use the number 3 hollower to get right back up around that little lip to reduce some of that material in there. And this works nice. You do have to pull the tool rest back a little bit. So when you are using the number 2 and number 3 hollowers, make sure you just take light little cuts with those, because it is hanging out there over the tool rest a little bit. Once I got it hollowed out, like I said, I ran through all the grits just dry, and then we'll get it parted off and back in the chuck. On this one I didn't go all the way through, so just cut it off by hand with the pole saw. Then we'll change jaws here real quick to the pin jaws. So I'm using the 1.5-inch ring. So the pin jaws actually work perfect for this. They're the right size. Get those changed real quick and get it in that recess. That way we can hold on to it and finish turning the bottom of this thing. Just checking to see if the bottom is concaved a little bit. So you want to cup it out just a little bit so that it sits flat on the table. Now that that's all done, I will run through one grit dry and then we'll switch to the walnut oil. And then with this, I run through all the rest of the grits all the way up to 600. So that oil really brought out the different colors in it. It looks really nice. I like that. Now that we have that done, we can go ahead and start working on the lid. I'll switch the jaws back to the larger set and we'll get the lid in there. And this is the difference between the two sets of rings. We have them in 1.5 inch, 2.5, and 3.5. They're the same as the larger ones, but instead of making a 2 tenons, you make a tenon and a recess. So we're going to put a tenon down on the bottom of this. It's kind of the same process. Use the calipers, just touch that one side. And this, with the smaller rings, it really opens up a lot of design options because the overall height is half what the other rings were. And with this, you don't need a very thick piece of wood to make a lid. Just being able to put a small tenon on the inside of it really opens up a lot of design options. Again with this, just taking my time and making sure that the tenon fits nice. And again, the lathe speed's still at 2500 and I'm back to the number 1 hauler. And I'm just cupping that tenon out just a little bit to kind of reduce the weight on it. You can leave it flat across there. You could actually dome it out if you want to. That would probably look pretty cool too. I just kind of cupped it out. And so I grabbed the base just to hold it up there to see if the lid was proportioned right. I wanted it to be a little bit smaller than the box. The only thing I wouldn't do on the tenon is make the walls of it too thin, because what I'm going to do here is change the jaws again and use that, grab a hold of that tenon to turn the top side of it. So you don't want the wall thickness to be too thin, because it could break them. So just cupping it out like that doesn't really mess with the stability of it, but yeah, I wouldn't go too thin on that. So I'm switching the jaws back to the pin jaws. And gonna clean up the top of it. But you'll see here in just a second, had a little mishap. So the only thing that's holding that on is that little teeny tenon. So I should have just brought the tailstock up right away, but I didn't think I had that much material to clean off, but obviously too much. So it just popped it out of there. It didn't damage it. I checked it real quick and put it back in, and we'll go ahead and tighten it back up and bring the tailstock up and finish the top of this. Yeah, even on something small like this, it's only being held on there by about 3/8, so it really needs some sort of support when you're trying to get off a lot of material like this too. And with the tailstock up there, you can really clean off a lot of material fast too, because it's not going to go anywhere. And once you get the basic shape down, you just have that little nub there, you can pull the tailstock away. And because you're just basically putting all the pressure straight in now, chances of it coming out at this point are pretty slim, but coming in from the side, that's when it puts a lot of pressure on it. So after I got that cleaned up, and just went around the side again, but just took light little cuts to finish shaping it. And on this, again, I ran through one grit dry and then switched over to the oil. And that tenon where I need to epoxy the ring on is inside, so just be careful not to put too much on. The SpectraPly is really nice. It actually cuts well and takes a finish very well too. And the finish on this is just the walnut oil, and it has a nice sheen on it. I just ran it up to, with the oil, up to 600. There we go, got it all done. So I didn't film putting the rings in, epoxying the rings in, and it was because something like this is super critical where I needed to get it lined up perfectly. And so I epoxied the top one in, and then I was kind of struggling with getting the bottom one in, but I ended up threading it all the way on to the top one, the one on the tenon, and then just put a little bit of epoxy on and pressing it down, because I had to have it lined up absolutely perfect when it was done. So with, you know, just a raw piece of wood, you got a little bit of wiggle room, but with this, you really have to get it lined up. So I just bottomed it out on the top of it and pressed it down in there. And so I've talked about this a little bit before, but I just use a popsicle stick and I take the ring and just put a little bit around the edge. And when I say a little bit, it just, you know, I mean, it's just the tip of the popsicle stick. You don't need a lot of epoxy. So the rings are back cut, so they have like a little bit of a burr to them too. So any bit of epoxy in there is going to hold them on. So it doesn't take much, but super fun. I haven't turned SpectraPly in a long time, but it was super fun. So I have, you know, this stuff comes in a ton of different colors and different sizes. You can do bottle stopper blanks. This was a 3x3 block of it is what I turned, but it was super. It's really nice too, especially for like stoppers or small stuff like that. The wood isn't going to move on you. It's all dry and seasoned and, you know, all glued together, so there's going to be no wood movement, and then you can finish it with a nice finish. So this right here is just the walnut oil, and it has a really nice sheen to it. So when I was talking to John at SpectraPly, he offered a 10% discount. So if you want 10% off any SpectraPly products, just use the wood shop in the coupon code and it'll give you 10% off. So it's super cool, and this stuff really does it in just about any color you want, and it is super cool. I turned some years ago. I can't remember what I was doing, but yeah, it's been a while. But they have big blocks of it too, for little boxes, little urns, and things like that. So that's why I reached out to him. And the variety of colors are just crazy. So you can get it in, you know, something, you know, like this, you know, where it's, you know, green or more natural. There's lots of different options with it, and it's super stable. So if you know, even if you put the ring in and come back the next morning, it's going to be exactly the way it was when you did it. All right, so I will put all their information down below in the description, their website, the coupon code. I will put all of that down there. All right, I hope you enjoyed the video. Oh, I almost forgot. So the rings that I used are the Niles new threaded rings. So these are super low profile. They're half the height of the original ones and less than half the weight. So on, say, like the 1.5 inch here, the original weight on the 1.5 inch was, I believe it was 1.9, and these ones here are 0.7 of an ounce. So the weight is considerably less, and the height is half. So it gives you a lot more design options as far as doing the lids and things. And I will put a link down below to the Niles website as well. All right, I hope you enjoyed the video. Take care and have a great weekend.